Welcome everybody. Today we're going to examine part of the endocrine system, specifically looking at the parathyroid and a hormone produced that helps regulate calcium levels. That hormone is called calcitonin, and we're specifically going to look at both the parathyroid and the hormone calcitonin and how these are, this is a good example of negative feedback. So to be clear, negative feedback is a response when there is either too much of a hormone being produced or too little of a hormone being produced. A really good quick analogy of this is, I'll use a sports analogy, which is looking at a team that is not scoring enough, and so they're not scoring enough, they're not making enough touchdowns, shooting enough baskets, making enough of those, so they make adjustments and change the players, the rotation, so that they can get more points on the board. You can also look at this in on a defensive side. You have the other team scoring too much, so you make adjustments to stop the other team from scoring and to not allow them to get the points that they need to. So negative feedback, good example there. In this case, we're regulating hormones to help us either increase or decrease the effects of these hormones so that the body can maintain itself in homeostasis, and that is the crux of what the endocrine system does. So first, let's look at the parathyroid. So here is the parathyroids. They're on the back of another endocrine gland called the thyroid. You can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. There's 2 here, and there are 2 here. And we normally don't see them much because they're on the back. The thyroid is located right on the trachea, and they're kind of hidden in the back there, but they do have a very important function. So let's look at that very closely. Look at the function there. The parathyroid produces a hormone called parathyroid hormone. I shorten that to PTH. And this is helping regulate blood calcium levels in the body. That's what the parathyroid hormone does. And it's getting this calcium from bones, which is where we store a lot of our calcium. So bones are being remodeled in this case by taking calcium there and then putting it into the blood. This parathyroid hormone also allows us to retain more food or calcium from the food that we eat. And of course, the next thing it's going to look at as filtering the blood is it's going to signal to the kidneys to retain some of that calcium that we would normally lose due to filtering the blood and getting rid of some of that calcium as waste. Now, of course, in order for this hormone to be activated, the body has to sense that we're not producing enough of it. So we're not producing enough of it, and therefore we need to produce more. And if we're not producing enough of it, the body says, all right, we need to produce more of it. That is then signaled to the parathyroids to start producing this PTH. And this parathyroid hormone, of course, as has been explained, helps us retain, hold on to the calcium, get more calcium within the body. And this, of course, helps us maintain proper function of nervous system, the bones, as well as helping us within other body systems, which depend on calcium being delivered so that it can help the muscles fire. Now, there's a hormone in opposition to this as well, and this hormone is produced in the thyroid. So we saw the back of the thyroid. Now we're going to look at the front. There it is, a thyroid, which has specific and important functions for us. Normally, the thyroid is helping us regulate our body's metabolism, and in this case, it also produces various hormones, one of which is called calcitonin. And this particular hormone helps us regulate calcium and phosphate levels in the blood. Now, this particular hormone acts in opposition to the parathyroid hormone, PTH, and it helps us regulate blood calcium levels, but in the opposite direction. Now, we'll go back to that negative feedback again. The parathyroid hormone is being produced in excess, And so in this case, we're holding on to too much calcium, which can lead to problems. And the thyroid then is signaled to start producing calcitonin and release that into the bloodstream, which then has exactly the opposite effect as parathyroid hormone. It's telling us to release the calcium, not hold on to too much, and to send it out. So we're not grabbing as much calcium from bone, we're not grabbing as much calcium from our food, and we're sending a lot of that calcium in the blood. We're sending a lot of that to the kidneys to be filtered out as waste within the urine. So as a review, we're looking at the parathyroid hormone helping us grab onto the calcium and hold on to it and put it in the bloodstream so that it's maintaining all the homeostasis where we need that calcium. But if we're holding on to too much, the body also has a way to then say we need to hold back on this and not hold on to as much calcium so that we can maintain good, healthy blood calcium levels. And again, these work in opposition to each other, but only do so after we have too much or too little of one. Now, there's also a very interesting aspect of the calcitonin levels in the body as well. And one of the things that we look at when the body is not functioning the way it should, one of the problems that we have is cells are growing in an abnormal rate, and so we get this wonderful thing called cancer. And in this case, we're going to look specifically at a type of cancer within the thyroid, and this is a very specific cancer called medullary thyroid cancer. Now, one of the things that has been done with recent studies, we're looking at how do we detect how these cells are growing, what their rate of proliferation is, and where they are going in the body. What has been discovered is that looking at the calcitonin levels in the blood can be helpful in finding these cells that are growing and helping the tumor grow, which is what we call metastasizing in the thyroid. It should be noted, of course, very, very quickly that this type of cancer is not one that has a specific cure to it, but what we can do, thyroid cancer is one of those types of cancers that you can recover from and can go into remission, but we want to make sure that these cells are not metastasizing and not spreading to other areas. So when we're looking at these calcitonin levels, what we're also looking at is we're looking at them not just in isolation, but we're also looking at another liquid called neutrophil. And what this neutrophil does is it also looks at the number of lymphocytes to neutrophil, and as these two work in tandem, what we can find then is where the thyroid cells are metastasizing, whether they're close to the thyroid or if they are now proliferating beyond the thyroid. So those that are in close proximity and those that are more distal to the thyroid, so we can detect where these cells are metastasizing and look at treatments that are going to be beneficial for the patient. Now, always something that we're looking at with cancer is, number one, how do we detect it? How early on do we detect it? And then what are the methods that we use to treat it? And in some cases, we need to look at what sort of tumors are being formed, whether they are malignant or benign, first of all, and then whether or not they are metastasizing and spreading. And this particular research that's being done tells us that we can examine the calcitonin levels, because those calcitonin levels help us in detecting where the cells are metastasizing and where that proliferation, which is damaging to the body, where it can lead to. So always tricky business with this, but looking at something very small can lead us to new treatments, new options, and give us the information that we need to help properly treat the patient. Again, most of these things that we can look at are done on one level, where we can make a mass prescription for something, but this needs to be done on a more individual basis. Here is the references for where this research was done. As you can see, they looked at this through different levels and some of the things they already have examined, and how to look at other research in making sure that that works with and lines up with previous research, and then just taking a different approach to it and seeing how it works. So in review, the parathyroid helps us maintain our blood calcium levels at healthy levels and helps us grab more calcium and hold on to it. And then the calcitonin is there to help counteract overproduction of the parathyroid and help us maintain that wonderful homeostasis through a process called negative feedback. So I hope you've enjoyed the small little lesson that we've had here, and we'll catch you at another time.